Alright, I'm going to be showing you how to make this pad, which I've called the Milky Way Pad. It's a spacey and very open pad that you can use for an ambient work or maybe a space style game that you're working on, just for a nice bit of ambience for an environment. So let's get started. To get started, I'm going to go ahead and turn off effects. We're going to be using quite a bit of the effects on the G1 pedal. And let's go ahead and switch to an init patch. And let's tune the synth by holding down Shift and record. Alright. So we're going to use two oscillators on this, and both will be set to square wave. So we can go ahead and get started now that it's tuned. We're now just using a single sawtooth oscillator by default. So let's go ahead and change both of our oscillators to square waves. We're going to keep the octaves just by default settings, so 8. And we want to go ahead and turn on the second oscillator via the mixer. And we want to turn it all the way up so it'll be at 1023. Again, I'm using parameter display. It'll help you figure out exactly what parameters I'm using. So let's go ahead and add some mod depth to it. I'm going to add or set it to 330. And we want to take the second VCO and slightly detune it so we kind of get like a unison style sound, a nice full rich sound to it, where the second oscillator will be kind of out of phase with the first. We also want to change the shape of both oscillators, so let's go to VCO 1, and we're going to change that to around 200 on the shape. And for the second oscillator, we want to change the shape to around 500. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with the amplitude envelope. And we want to keep the decay and sustain normal, so that's fully on by an init patch. So the attack we want to switch pretty high up there to around 870. Let's just go with 870. And the release we want to change to around the same, so I'm going to change it actually a little higher. Let's change it to about 900. So let's give that a listen. Starting to sound pretty good. Alright, so the next envelope we want to change is the filter envelope, or the second envelope, which will be routed to the filter envelope. So let's go ahead and change the attack to around 980 on that. And we're going to change the release to around the same time, 980. Alright. Nothing should happen yet because we haven't changed that on the filter settings. We're going to use some LFO in the future, so let's go ahead and change one of the parameters about the LFO while we're here. Click Edit Mode, and then you want to click on Unison, and press it until you get to LFO Voice Sync. And we're going to want to turn that off using the Program Value wheel. Now press Exit. We want to desync all the LFOs in this to make it sound a little bit out of phase with each other. So let's go ahead and work on the filter. We want it in 2-pole mode, so 12 dB per octave. And we want to change the cutoff to around 440, maybe 450. Let's go with 450. We want to add a little bit of resonance, so let's change the resonance to 200. And then we want to change the envelope int for this, which will effectively use the second envelope as a filter envelope. We want to change it to about +30. So let's give that a listen. Sounding fantastic. Let's go ahead and add some more texture to it by using the LFO. So let's go ahead and target shape. This will be really nice since we're using 2 pulse width or 2 square waves. That'll effectively be pulse width modulated since we're gonna change their width using the LFO. We want to have the rate at around 280 and the int at around 250. And we want the wave to be a triangle wave for this, for the LFO. So let's give that a listen. Alright, that sounds great. So now we're going to go to the effects section, and you can use different effects pedals for this. I'm going to use the G1 on. I was going to initially show you guys how to do it with a Aventine Space, but it's a very expensive pedal that costs about the same as the synth, so I'm going to use a cheaper pedal. Maybe I'll make another pad. It's a little different. That'll be using the space reverb. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to go switch over to the empty patch that I was using on this to make one. So the first effect that we want to add is a multi-tap delay. And as it does as it sounds, you basically have multiple delays in there that trigger at different periods throughout the delay cycle. So let's go ahead, and the settings we want to use for the multi-tap delay, we want to set the time all the way to the highest setting, so 3000. Then we want to set the pattern to 6, so it'll basically have 6 taps. We want to set the mix to 45. We don't want it to be overbearing, but we want to definitely hear it. The tone needs to be set to 10, and the level needs to be set to 100. Alright, so let's go ahead and hear what that sounds like just with the multi-tap delay. As you can hear, it's a stereo sweep, and you also hear the beating of the LFO and the changes of the pulse width modulation affecting each of the taps of the delay, so it gives it a really nice shimmery sound without using a shimmer delay. I know a shimmer delay technically has some modulation in it too, but this is working out pretty well for us. One of the coolest reverbs that's actually built into the G1 on is the particle reverb, which I think is a line 6 reverb. It's proprietary to them. Well, obviously Zoom copied it for this, but we're going to go ahead and add that. So I went ahead and turned it on, and the settings for this, we want to turn the dwell up from its default. We want to set it to 41, we want to set the gain to 80, and all the other settings can be set to default. Actually, I think mix I turned up to 60 here. So let's go ahead and hear what that sounds like. Now you can hear on the release how long it just trails with an expansive sound. It's really spacey. And you can go ahead and use that for your ambient mix. You can use it as a drone, for instance, in an ambient mix. You can even use it for your space-themed RPG or something along those lines. I hope you guys like that.